I think it's absurd to categorize Mr. Weiss's appearance as any sort of testimony, because I didn't know any more about anything after he testified than before he testified.
No, I think that's a real good point, because he didn't know, he couldn't answer, he doesn't know about it. That's all he kept saying. But when did you find out? I mean, what was the reason they said they were doing this right now?
They didn't elaborate on why they were doing it right now. I think the reason is obvious. There's going to be a large push to discredit anyone who's attempting to expose the abuses within senior leadership at ATF. I've been the most vocal for the longest time. They know it's only a matter of time before everything I've reported publicly and privately is going to come to light. I think it's just a knee-jerk panic decision on their part.
And you did. You blew the whistle on Operation Fast and Furious and helped set up this website called Clean Up ATF. What made you decide to do that?
I think that's part of what's gotten lost in this process early on, is this didn't happen overnight.
Yes.
None of us came forward, not Dodson, not Gill, not Jaquez, no one who has spoken publicly did this in a vacuum. We have been pounding on the leadership of ATF for years, providing documentary evidence of unethical and illegal conduct by their own chief counsel's office, that they were taking bad counsel in the running of our bureau's business, and that we provided documentation. We attempted to handle this in-house, professionally, quietly, and effect the necessary changes. They were ignored. We were ignored. The documentary evidence was ignored, and so then necessarily the only mechanism is the public. I mean, that's who pays our salary at the end of the day.
Yes. And, I don't know if you were able to see it today, but Obama had a press conference today, and he was asked about Operation Fast and Furious. And he made clear, he says, Attorney General Eric Holder, he didn't know anything about it. Is there any way, from what you know of how ATF operates, Holder wouldn't have known about something like this?
Well, with all due respect, he's got a long history of service to the government. If he didn't, he should be resigning immediately. 2,000 guns over a 2-year period? That's insane. It's absurd. And no one in our chain of command is going to be dynamic enough to make a decision like that without the Attorney General giving him the nod. There's just no way that could happen, not for that extended of a period, especially when issues started arising.
So you say he had to have known?
There is no way Kenneth Melson would have pulled the trigger and allowed, through all this misleading counsel he received. This was a knee-jerk to our failed. They gave us a lot of money over the last 2-3 years to get a grasp of this firearms trafficking to Mexico. We misappropriated it. We misused it. We took ill-advised enforcement actions exclusive of Fast and Furious. And when the OIG report came out and said we had failed on virtually every level, somebody had to account for all these tens of millions of dollars that we've accomplished nothing with. I believe this was a knee-jerk, and somebody came up with the idea, and I still would love to know who floated that idea to begin with, because I'd love to hear that conversation. But before Ken Melson would have ever authorized it, approved it, watched it on his computer, any of the things we know have occurred, there's no way he doesn't bounce that off of his boss and at least apprise him, make him aware.
But what you're saying is they launched Operation Fast and Furious because, first they had the 90%. Then that was proven wrong. So now, was it all about trying to prove what they were trying to prove, which was that the guns are coming from the U.S.?
I think they were trying to create an image. They were trying to back into a position by creating the data, something to support that we weren't failing across every directorate in ATF, most specifically gun runner and any prior attempts and illusions that we were, impacting guns going south and violence in Mexico.
So this was about making the numbers work in their favor.
Oh, it's absolutely that this current leadership within ATF, has taken a position that they're going to legislate from a bureau.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, we've taken a position. You only need go to the firearms industry that we worked so hard to embrace over the years and become partners with in enforcing the laws and protecting people's right to bear arms. And they've done so much devastation trying to direct policy and enact legislation from inside the Bureau.
Yeah. I mean, in all your years with ATF, did you ever let a gun walk?
Never, and I never would. And that was ATF 101. For dramatic sake, I'll say it was the first day, but I guarantee it was within the first week of me ever setting foot in an ATF facility. It was made crystal clear. Don't come home if you lose a gun, no matter what the circumstances. Yeah. Don't come home because you won't have a job.
And when you hear that they were going to track these guns, I mean, Agent Forcelli said once a gun went across the border, the case was dead. I mean, did they really even, do you think, have a plan?
No, of course they didn't have a plan. If they'd have had a plan, the Mexicans would have been dialed in. Mexican law enforcement, Mexican military. Look, these people are fighting it out. And how could you possibly track these guns without someone on the other side to pick up the surveillance, to garner the intel, to pass intel back? It was ridiculous. We don't walk guns even under a very prescribed set of plans. We will occasionally do a controlled delivery, but that only that we can control it in such a way that those guns are back in our vault by the end of the night. Yeah. Period. For the very reason, and it's been stated for ever since we've been a bureau, we cannot have one gun ever attached to us that we could have prevented that killed a police officer. Well,
you know, as you said, Melson's going to go up there and testify next month. You know, and he says he didn't do anything wrong, that he was simply carrying out his boss's wishes, and there's not too many people above him. I mean, do you think he's actually going to be able to go up there and name names like Congressman Issa is hoping?
I'm sure he can, whether he will or not, but at the end of the day, that didn't work for the Nazis at Nuremberg, and it didn't work for Cali at My Lai. We do not get to follow unlawful and illegal orders. Our oath is to the Constitution, not to Eric Holder, not to Lanny Brewer, not to Ken Melson.
And George Gillette, I mean, he's got himself his own attorney now.
Well, George Gillette needs his own attorney.
Going back onto this whole issue concerning you and this whole issue of retaliation, I mean, Agent Costa testified that it's common practice at ATF to retaliate against anybody who doesn't toe the company line. Is that what you've witnessed over the years?
That's why this has happened. That specifically to me, that's why Fast and Furious, the failed programs, we have managers that they're not my words. The GAO, the GSA, the OIG, the OSC has done negative reports regarding virtually every one of our programs over the last 5 to 7 years. Heinous reports. Total breakdowns in management, total breakdowns, misappropriation of money, property, assets. All of those people named in those reports have been promoted.
Well, you know,
if they're not going to listen, if they're not going to make adjustments, why have those reports? Why even do them? If ATF is going to say we don't agree, we've done nothing wrong, we don't do that, we don't retaliate. There's hundreds of complaints out there right now pending various stages of disciplinary action, and a vast majority of them are contingent on some sort of reprisal or retaliation.
Vince, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you, because tomorrow Congressman Cummings is holding this forum because he says, quote unquote, no examination of this issue would be complete without analyzing the country's gun laws. Do you think our gun laws, do you think these gun dealers who were, who were recruited by ATF are to blame?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Everything they could do and everything that the inspectors and the investigators and the special agents in this bureau have worked to do, which has become a partnership with a lawful industry, been destroyed by the acts of a few leaders and a mismanaged program, and has created them to be the enemies and the bad guys. It's not against the law to sell guns in this country. Yeah. It's against the law for bad people to have guns.
And to let them walk.
Now, that is against law, and there are obviously conspiracy to traffic in firearms is something I haven't heard too much mention of yet, but it should be.
Yeah. So do you feel like they're trying to make an example of you so nobody else comes forward?
Absolutely. You think, is there, short of Jay Dobbins, who, like, preposterously, they've made some sort of attempt to countersue to drain his legal funds and create hardship in his life. We're both the two most vocal, critical agents in the Bureau of the leadership or lack thereof across all directorates here. Everybody's watching us. If they crush us, they will get everybody else to step in line. I don't believe that, but I believe that's their mentality.